Hello, and welcome to Under 1000. My name's Thomas Flower, and each episode I'll read you a new piece of flash fiction. All of the stories are 1000 words or less. Today, I'll be reading Third Wheel. Please be aware that this episode contains strong language, so if that's likely to upset you or anyone that you're listening with, then you might want to skip this one. Hey, I think I'm gonna head home. Gotta be honest, I'm starting to feel like a bit of a third wheel here. Tammie sheepishly began gathering her things, preparing to leave, unsure whether her honesty in this situation was bold or uncalled for. She quickly concluded it was probably both. "Oh no, babe, don't," her friend Louise replied, somewhat half-heartedly. In truth, Louise knew the night wasn't going so well, and while she didn't want to be rid of Tammie exactly, she had little interest in properly fighting for her to stay. "It's fine. I'll catch you two another time, okay? Enjoy the rest of your night," Tammie said, packing the last of her things into her bag before making an overly hasty exit. Louise and Simon watched her leave, both caught between being offended and relieved at the same time. On the walk home, Tammie began to wonder what had changed exactly. There was a time when Louise and her were inseparable. In those days, the prospect of leaving each other for even a moment was one they tried to put off as much as possible, even going so far as living together when they first left home. So why now, 10 years down the line, could Tammie not be shot of her friend fast enough? Just what had happened exactly? Well, the main new thing since then is Simon, Tammie reasoned. He was the obvious culprit for any difference in the two's relationship. And yet, Tammie didn't feel like Simon had changed Louise in any fundamental way. It wasn't like she hated or resented Simon for turning her friend into some unrecognizable person. Louise was much the same, really. Different with time, perhaps, but only in the way that anyone would be. Still, there was something about Simon that irked Tammie, something she still couldn't quite figure out. Oh shit! Do I love Louise? The thought stopped her in her tracks, causing her to halt her stride momentarily and stand slightly in shock under the cold glare of a street lamp. Then, just as quickly, she laughed, dismissing the idea immediately. Tammie may have had feelings for many girls down the years, but Louise would never be one of them. There was something too close about their relationship to even think of her in that way. It'd be like asking if she'd fallen in love with her own sister. There was simply no way. And yet something about the configuration of the three of them, her, Louise, and Simon, bugged her in a way which she still couldn't put her finger on. Trudging up the stairs to her flat, she unlocked the door, still mulling everything over. Trying to push the thoughts away momentarily, she set the kettle to boil for a late-night cup of tea, and grabbed some discarded plates and bowls left scattered on the table. Taking them through to the kitchen, she laid them in the sink and ran the hot water, preparing to wash up. As she plunged her hands into the suds, she had a revelation. There was no problem with Simon or Louise. It was simply that Simon was the marker of difference between her and her friend. No fault of anyone's particularly, but in Simon, Tammie could see the marriage, children, and conventional stability that lay in Louise's future. No doubt Louise could see that too. In fact, Tammie was sure that was part of the attraction. But I could have that too if I wanted, her contrarian side responded immediately, putting down the theory just as it developed. And it was true. She could have all that. Marriage, children, conventional domesticity, it was open to her just as anyone else these days. But she knew, deep down, that she would never take it. And it was this fundamental and unexplored difference in direction which now caused a chasm to appear between her and Louise. There was no deliberate rejection of either side particularly. Tammie was happy that Louise was happy, just as she was sure that Louise would be for her. She knew she didn't judge Louise for her choices and situation, and assumed the same of her friend. But Tammie knew just as well that the social world she now inhabited was not one Louise did, and that for all her generalized acceptance, Louise did not really know or understand these other ways of existing. Whilst Tammie was happy to see her friend settling down, She knew that their difference in trajectory meant Louise would soon be too wrapped up in marriage and then babies, the traditional trappings of proper feminine expression, to understand a world where such things were far less of a concern. Just as Tammie was lost deep in musings and soapsuds, her phone buzzed. A text from Louise. "Hope you got back okay. Good to see you. Hope we can do it again soon," followed by 3 kisses. Tammie felt a momentary shot of guilt. She'd been so wrapped up in self-pity and projection that she hadn't let her friend know she was home safe. Composing a quick text, she fired a message back and endeavoured to move on. As she got ready for bed after her cup of herbal tea, Tammie resolved to let things take their course. If Louise and her were to end up as distant strangers to each other eventually, there was no need to speed up the process by fretting. She would still see her friend, still try to find the areas and spaces where they could commune with each other, and in the meantime, she would search for others who might share her experiences and understandings. People who she could become just as close with through their mutuality as she once had with Louise. A wave of optimism surged within her for the first time that night. She might not have Louise in the future, but she knew that there would be future Louises. Thank you for listening to Under 1000. I'm your host, Thomas Flower. To follow the show online, look for Under 1000 Pod on Twitter or Facebook. If you'd like to support the show on Patreon, go to patreon.com/under1000pod, where you can sign up to read each month's stories in advance, as well as to have a thank you be read during these credits. The theme music is an instrumental version of In Between Days by Nick Tate and the Sharks. To hear the full song and more from the same EP, go to Nick Tate, NICTATE, and thesharks.bandcamp.com, or search for them on your favourite streaming platform. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and that you'll join me again next time for some more super short fiction.